Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we've got an update from Tesla regarding their headquarters. We've also got a couple of Cybertruck videos, some possible updates on Tesla's hardware for FOMC meeting minutes, Lucid earnings, and a couple other items as well. Looking at the stock, kind of an interesting day. Tesla underperforming this morning, but recovering throughout the day, finishing up almost 2% to close at $200.86, while the Nasdaq ended up just 0.1%. Today we did have a little bit of macro news with the FOMC meeting minutes being published. Remember, this is from early February, so before we got the CPI and PPI reports. But the meeting minutes this time, they talked about with inflation obviously remaining above their target, the labor market remaining tight. With this backdrop and considering the lags in tightening of monetary policy and the effects that that has, almost all participants agreed that it was appropriate to raise the target range 25 basis points. So of course we knew about that, but almost all participants agreeing. And then the remainder of them sounds like they were more considering a 50 basis point increase rather than, Fed Chairman Powell talking about, hey, look at the meeting minutes to see if we talked about potentially not raising at all. So it doesn't sound like from the meeting minutes that there was much conversation about not doing any increase at the February meeting, with those that were not in favor of the 25 basis point increase leaning more towards 50 basis points. So kind of interesting to see that today. And then for Tesla news, we've got an announcement from Tesla during the middle of the day today that they would be having an announcement with Gavin Newsom, governor of California, about their headquarters. And in this announcement, which was very brief, they announced that they are going to be locating their California engineering headquarters, or locating their worldwide engineering headquarters rather, in California. This is at the old Hewlett-Packard location where Tesla has had operations now for quite some time. If we look at sort of where Tesla's California locations have been, they were at 3500 Deer Creek Road. The HP campus is at 1501 Page Mill Road. So this isn't a huge move, and Tesla has already been migrating over in this direction for quite some time. As we have talked about before, and Tesla has posted in a blog post recently, they have continued to expand in California despite their headquarters officially moving to Texas. So this announcement today, I don't think is, a whole lot of news for those of us that have followed the company very closely. But I think the most important part of this is that it shows that Elon is, making an effort, getting along with the government in California, which has been a little bit of a tense relationship, especially over the last couple of years. So I think just sharing the stage here with Gavin Newsom, and Gavin Newsom being very complimentary of Tesla, of Elon, recognizing all of their accomplishments and contributions to California, I think that's the most important part of this announcement to me. It's really good to see that, especially given just some of the recent frustrations I think there have been in that arena regarding Elon, regarding Tesla. It's nice to see them have this amicable relationship, and I think that bodes well for Tesla overall. So happy to see that, although it may not necessarily have been all that much in terms of news for those of us, again, following closely. But it does, continue to indicate that Tesla will continue to expand in California, which I think is a positive. There's obviously talent that's going to be wanting to be located there, as well as in Texas, there at Austin. Also interesting with Elon, sort of olive branching with Newsom today, a little bit of that with CNBC. They did an article on this, and most of the stuff, from the announcement is sort of the boilerplate stuff about, hey, investing in California, all that stuff, that's great. But it's just interesting that Musk actually had a conversation with CNBC. So in addition to with Newsom, this conversation, Elon also reaching out a little bit, or at least being responsive to CNBC. In terms of what he said to them, he did say that the new facility, which again, not necessarily all that new, is effectively a headquarters of Tesla, making it kind of a dual headquartered company, of course, with the location in Austin as well. So again, kind of interesting to see that, but nothing too new. We will maybe have a little bit more news on this. Tesla today is setting a live stream for 9 o'clock Central, 7 Pacific. It's also called Engineering HQ, so this may just be an error in terms of when they set up their live stream. Certainly would not be anything new to me, errors with live streams, but we will see if they have anything else to announce later on this evening when that live stream maybe goes live, maybe not. They were setting up, according to Twitter here, some event at their Palo Alto campus, which I'm not sure from this tweet if this is actually the new location or the old one. If it's the new location, obviously that's not anything noteworthy. But with this live stream, maybe something else going on. So we'll keep an eye on that. And the next topic, we may have an update here on Tesla's Hardware 4. Of course, we're all very curious on this as we head towards Investor Day. Ryan from the Kilowatts as he occasionally does, spotted some vehicles in the Fremont lot that have some updates to them. The rear of the vehicles have been updated to remove the Tesla logos, so we can see these are Model S and X's, by the way, but we can see that there are some updates here, and specifically to the cameras, it looks like there have been updates as well. No, headlight cameras or anything like that, no major visible changes to the actual setup or locations of the camera, but it does look like there have been some at least minor tweaks. Tesla North recapped this and put it in a little bit easier format for us to see here, but you can see from Ryan's shots, this is what the cameras that he saw yesterday look like versus the old ones. You can see this looks much more facing sideways than rear, like the side repeater cameras that we used to have or currently have. I would note though that, as we often talk about with the Cybertruck, the positioning of the camera, the lens can have a lot of effects on how these things look. So although this does look like it's much more sideways facing, you can kind of see just by the housing that this is taken from a more rearward angle than this other shot. So I don't think it's quite as sideways facing as it appears in this photo, but still, that being said, I do think it is more sideways facing than the old version. So it looks like there's some tweaks there, and you can see just the cameras looking different too. It's hard to tell too much of a difference with this front housing, but it looks like there's some difference there with that main camera. Can't really tell if there's 2 or 3 up there. We expect 2 based on the previous leak that we had talked about from Green the Only. And again, with the pillar cameras, which seem to be remaining with this setup, those obviously look updated as well. So, and then same thing kind of with the rear camera. You can see it just looks a little bit bigger, and it also has that little bit of a red reflection that we didn't see previously. So we don't know if this is hardware 4. Maybe it's just an iteration of hardware 3 that is preceding hardware 4. Wouldn't make a ton of sense, but this would be, I guess, a little bit unexpected, since we again had that leak from Green that talked about 11 different cameras. Maybe that was the hardware for hardware capable for the Semi, and maybe Tesla's just leveraging that across all vehicles but not putting as many cameras on vehicles like the S or the X. So we'll see. More of this seems to be leaking out, so if anything, hopefully an indication that we're getting an update here soon as we head into Investor Day a week from today. Next, as we have been waiting for version 11.3, we talked about the release notes yesterday. Tesla Bull on Twitter has been sharing some of the 11.3 videos from their experience so far. Obviously, an employee sharing this, but we can see here that he talks about how it's been impressive so far, and when driving on the highway, the vehicle is doing some offsetting in the lane to, or rather around, larger vehicles like trucks or semis, which I think the current version does a little bit, but the offset is pretty minor. And I think that's been, at least maintained or improved even in this FSD Beta version 11.3 is what it looks like. So it's not the highest quality video, but I've just paused on a frame here where you can see the sort of path plan, obviously very central in the lane. And then as it approaches this truck, you can see that it definitely offsets significantly to the left in terms of the lane. So it's pretty exciting to see that, which to me it looks like more of an aggressive offset. Tough to tell not being in the vehicle, but that should make things a lot more comfortable in those scenarios. And again, even though the current version has this maybe a little bit, nice to see that with FSD Beta on the highway, that is still part of the feature set this time around. So interesting and good to see that. And then we also got a couple updates on the Cybertruck today. A couple of videos here that vary in their resolution. I would say this one pretty low, but later in the day we did get another one that seems to be a little bit higher. CybertruckOwnersClub.com posting this. So we can see if this video will load for us. The Cybertruck appears to be, very high up with its suspension, very, higher than we have seen, certainly in most cases. I'm not sure if this is the newest vehicle. It does have these rims or these wheels that we had seen with, if you saw the Cybertruck on a trailer and it had different cameras and stuff, it looked like Tesla was testing out some things with autopilot like they normally do. But it had these wheels. It doesn't have the side mirrors that we had seen that were a little bit more angular. So Tesla's probably got a couple more recent beta prototypes running around. This may be one of them, of the 2 that we've kind of seen so far. It does still have the side pillar cameras, which could be interesting when we talk about the positioning for hardware 4. But kind of nice to see just a little bit of a different view for the Cybertruck with that higher suspension. Nothing else that I could see that was notable in that video. And then similarly with this one, very low resolution, but we can see it at least driving around a little bit with the higher suspension, which is pretty cool to see. Should be fun for people that need that little bit of extra space off the ground. So looking forward to more information on the Cybertruck soon. And then last couple of topics here, we've got an update on Lucid. They posted their earnings today. They, of course, shared their fourth quarter deliveries, which we had previously talked about 1,900 versus production of about 3,500. So their inventory continues to grow. In terms of their guidance for 2023, maybe the most interesting part of their earnings report, they guided for production of only 10,000 to 14,000 vehicles. So at the low end, that'd actually be less than Q4 annualized. And even at the high end, this is lower than their original 2022 guidance was, which was 20,000 vehicles. They since had lowered that in February last year to 12,000 to 14,000 vehicles, and then of course revised that in August down to 6,000 to 7,000 vehicles for the year. So while they did come in that guidance range that they had updated for 2022, the midpoint here for 2023 would even be lower than their, the guidance for 2022 as recent as the beginning of August last year, so about 6 months ago. So interesting to see that. Definitely would be pretty disappointed in that guidance. Obviously not an investor in Lucid, but if I were, I would be disappointed in that. But it's interesting to see not much growth there. And then they also talked about the strength of their balance sheet. They said that they have a track record of proven liquidity management, and that there was some quote in here that they have focused on building a fortress balance sheet centered around ample liquidity. So they talk about how they have $4.9 billion of runway, 12 plus months of runway, leading into the first quarter next year. If we look at that though, they burned about $1 billion in cash in the fourth quarter, or rather negative free cash flow of about $1 billion. And if we look at their balance sheet here, they actually only have about $3.9 billion in cash and cash equivalents and short-term investments. Looks like 800 million of what they're counting there in that 4.9 billion is actually in inventory, which I don't think I would consider all that liquid. Inventory is not going to just be finished vehicles. It's probably other, parts and things like that. So not necessarily just finished inventory sitting on the lot that maybe is a little bit more liquid, or maybe Lucid might have some issues with selling, but definitely not something that I would consider, a cash equivalent necessarily. So, obviously, as we've been talking about, things not looking all that great for Lucid. The other thing I would point out is that on their reservation count here, which they updated, they say they have 28,000 reservations. Back in their Q3 report, or I guess their Q2 report, which would have been back in August, they said they had 37,000 reservations. Since then, they've delivered 3,300 vehicles. So this has dropped by 9,000, even though they've only delivered, 3,300 vehicles. So losing about 20% of their reservations, not from fulfilling them, but just looks like cancellations over the last 6 months or so. Pairing that with the deliveries being significantly lower than production, not much growth guidance for this year, looking like a pretty tough position for Lucid, but Saudi PIF is probably just going to completely buy them up at some point. We'll see. All right, last then, just an update on Starlink. They have announced new pricing for residential services, at least here in the United States. And this is going to be based on capacity. So they have lowered actually prices by $20 a month for areas that have excess capacity, and then increased pricing by $10 a month for areas that have limited capacity right now. So some demand pricing implemented from Starlink on top of, I think we have seen that with the RV service or one of the other service plans, but probably a good move for Starlink to be able to have that flexibility and kind of control their usage based on some small minor changes in pricing. All right, that is it for today then. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast, and we'll see you tomorrow for the Thursday, February 23rd episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.